Good evening, everyone. So in today's video, we are going to be reading the last three scenes of Act 5, scenes 6, 7, and 8. These are also the last three scenes of the entire play. So finally, we get to know what happens to Macbeth at the end of all these acts after going through so many events, so many ups and downs. Macbeth's life is finally coming to an end in these three scenes. So, in continuation with what we saw in the last scene, Macbeth has decided to go out and fight his enemies rather than stay safe inside the castle. We also saw how his hope has been shattered when one of the soldiers reports that the forest at Burnham is seen to move towards the castle at Dunsinane. So he realizes that the supernatural powers that he had trusted for so long, the ones on whom he had placed so much trust, were actually leading him into a sort of a trap. Okay, so he finally realizes that it is foolishness to trust these supernatural elements, and that they often lie in order to corrupt the soul of man and to make him do evil. But even though he realizes all of these things, he is still determined to fight to the end. So that is one quality that we can actually see in Macbeth's character, that he is not willing to give up, even in the in the last moments of his life. So now we go to scene 6, which is happening in front of Macbeth's castle in Dunsinane. We see the English soldiers enter the scene under the command of Malcolm, Seward, Macduff, and they are all carrying those branches that they had cut from the forest of Burnham. So Malcolm is the first to speak in this scene. He says, "Now near enough, your leafy screens throw down, and show like those who you are. You, worthy uncle, shall with my cousin, your right noble son, lead our first battle. Worthy Macduff and we shall take upon us what else remains to do according to our order." So Malcolm is giving orders, right? He says all of the soldiers can now throw down those branches that they had been carrying above their heads, and now the first attack will be led by that eminent soldier called Seward and his son, and the rest of the battle will be conducted by Malcolm along with Macduff. Okay. So finally, they are going to do, they are going to plunge into action. After so much planning, after so much, thinking about what to do about Macbeth, finally, here we are at the battlefield. So Seward replies, "Fare you well. Do we but find the tyrant's power tonight, let us be beaten if we cannot fight." So Seward is, encouraging everyone. So tonight we are going to find the tyrant's power, right? We are going to measure how much power Macbeth has, and if we are not able to fight when we sense so much power in Macbeth, then it is better to be beaten. Okay, so even if Macbeth is very powerful, Seward is asking the English soldiers to go and fight, right? Otherwise, it is better to be defeated. And finally, Macduff says, in this very short scene, Macduff is saying, "Make all our trumpets speak, give them all breath, those clamorous harbingers of blood and death." So he says, let us blow our trumpets. In every war, these instruments are blown in order to, give encouragement to the soldiers, or to, strike fear into the heart of the enemy. So like that, Macduff is saying, let the trumpets be blown, and these will be like messengers. Harbingers means messengers who will, who will predict, the onset of blood and death. Okay, so the sound of these trumpets, it's a signal of blood and death to come. So that is the end of this small scene. We will directly go to the next one. Now in scene 7, we are witnessing what is happening in another part of the field. Field is the battlefield. Okay. So along with alarms, Macbeth enters the stage and he says, "They have tied me to a stake. I cannot fly, but bear like I must fight the course." So he's saying, I am almost as if I am tied to a stake. A stake is just a stick which is driven deep into the ground. So just like you might chain an animal, a dog or a bear, Macbeth is now chained to this place. He cannot fly away. He cannot leave. So just like a chained bear, Macbeth must fight. Okay. So in in Shakespeare's time, one of the sports which Elizabethan Englishmen liked very much was called bear baiting. Bearbaiting. Bear baiting is when you trap a bear and then you sort of make it angry so that it attacks, but with your weapons and stones and all, you gradually attack the bear back and finally you kill it. So it's a very cruel sport, like bullfighting in Spain. Englishmen used to be very fond of bear baiting. So like a bear in this sport, Macbeth is now tied to his castle, right? He cannot leave. Okay. But there is one hope that is still with him. So what is that? He says, "What is he that was not born of woman? Such a one am I to fear or none." So he says, I don't need to fear anybody except a person who is not born from a woman. So there is no such person, so I don't have to be afraid of anyone. So at this time, the son of Seward, young Seward, enters and he is speaking to Macbeth. Okay. So remember, he's a youth, he's a young man whose first battle is happening. This is his first battle. So he has now come to the front of Macbeth, and now these two people are going to fight. So young Seward is asking Macbeth, "What is thy name?" And Macbeth replies, "Thou wilt be afraid to hear it. My name is so scary that you'll shake with fear if I tell you what my name is." Young Seward says, "No, though thou callest thyself a hotter name than any is in hell." So even if you have a name which is more evil than the name of any devil who is in hell, I will not be afraid of you. Okay. But Macbeth says, "My name is Macbeth." And young Seward's answer is, "The devil himself could not pronounce a title more hateful to mine ear." So he says, even the devil's name is not as hateful as the name Macbeth is when I hear it. So I hate Macbeth's name so much that even the devil's name is more pleasing. It is more tolerable than the name Macbeth. And Macbeth says, "No, nor more fearful." So he says, my name is not just hateful to you. It is also a name that you should fear, because I am capable of killing you. I am capable of defeating you. But young Seward, like most young people, is full of confidence, and he says, "Thou liest, abhorred tyrant. With my sword I'll prove the lie thou speakest." So he says, you're telling a lie. You cannot defeat me. So with my sword I will prove that I can kill you. And finally they fight. A long fight happens on the stage. At the end of that fight, unfortunately, young Seward is killed. So he dies. And after killing young Seward, Malcolm says this, "Thou was born of woman." Okay. So I killed you because you were born from a woman. "But swords I smile at, weapons laugh to scorn, brandished by man, that is of a woman born." So he says, I have no fear of weapons or swords or any other sort of deadly instrument which is handled by any person who is born from a woman. So such things I have no fear of. And then he goes out of the scene, and then we see suddenly Macbeth entering. So these scenes are full of action. People come in, go out. It's just like a war. during a war, there's lots of confusion. People are running here and there. So like that, Macbeth, runs away from the scene during this time, and immediately Macduff enters. So Macduff is saying, what is he saying? Let's look at what he's saying. That way the noises, tyrant, show thy face. If thou beest slain, and with no stroke of mine, my wife and children's ghosts will haunt me still. So Macduff is following the noise, trying to find out where Macbeth is. And he wants to take revenge for his wife and children. So he says, if I see you, if I see that Macbeth is already killed by someone else, then I will never forgive myself. Because I want to be the person who takes, the final blow. Right? I want to kill Macbeth in order to take revenge for my wife and children. So if I don't do it, their ghosts, their spirits are going to haunt me. Okay. I cannot strike at wretched kerns whose arms are hired to bear their staves. Either thou, Macbeth, or else my sword with an unbattered edge I sheath again undeeded. So he says, I don't want to fight the mercenaries. The kerns are mercenaries. Mercenaries are basically hired soldiers. They are just fighting for Macbeth because they have been paid by Macbeth. So Macduff says, I don't want to fight any of these mercenaries. If I don't get to fight Macbeth, then I'll just put my sword back in the sheath, back in the cover. So I will not draw my sword, I will not fight anyone. There is only one person that I want to fight, and that is Macbeth. Okay. And then he listens to the sound coming from somewhere, and he says, there thou shouldst be by this great clatter. Okay. So I hear some sound coming from that direction. That is where you must be, from this great sound that is coming from there. One of greatest note seemed bruited. Let me find him, fortune, and more I beg not. So the sound that he is hearing indicates that somebody great has been killed. Okay. So he's just, Macduff is just hoping that it is not Macbeth who has been killed. Right? He wants Macbeth alive so that he can kill him. So, saying a prayer to fortune, please let me find him, he exits. So now we see another two people entering, Malcolm and Seward. So Seward says, this way, my lord, the castle is gently rendered. The tyrant's people on both sides do fight. The noble thanes do bravely in the war. The day almost itself professes yours, and little is to do. So Seward is saying, we have almost won. The castle is almost in our control. Macbeth's own people are now fighting against him, and all the brave thanes, the lords of Scotland, they are all fighting very bravely in the war, and we have almost won the day. Right? This day's victory is going to be ours. Only some more fighting is left to do. Malcolm replies, we have met with foes that strike beside us. Enter, sir, the castle. So Malcolm says, we have even seen enemies who are now fighting with us. Right? When they saw that we were the ones who have come to defeat Macbeth, they switched sides. Now they are fighting along with us. So our enemies have now turned into our friends. And Seward says, it is now safe to enter the castle. So Macbeth's castle has now been taken over by Seward and Malcolm. Okay. So that is the end of scene 7, and now we move on to the final scene of this play, which is scene 8. So for the last time, again, we see Macbeth entering in another part of the battlefield. Now we see Macbeth talking to himself. He says, why should I play the Roman fool and die on mine own sword, whilst I see lives the gashes do better upon them? So he says, I am not going to commit suicide. In Roman history, when Roman people were surrounded by enemies, they used to commit suicide by placing their sword vertically on the ground, and then they would just fall on the sword so that the sword will pierce their body and they will die. So they did this because they thought it is an honorable way to die. Rather than being captured by the enemy and then killed, it is better to commit this kind of suicide. So Macbeth is now saying, I am not going to be like that. I am not going to commit suicide. Okay. So as long as I am alive, I am going to kill others. The gashes means the wounds. I am going to be inflicting wounds upon others because that is better than wounding myself. Okay. So he's not going to give up. Macbeth is not going to give up at all. So at this time we see Macduff entering the scene. So Macduff is, crying out loud. He says, "Turn, hellhound, turn." Okay. So turn and run away from me, you hellhound. Hellhound means you dog of hell. Okay. So that is how he addresses Macbeth. And this is Macbeth's reply when he sees that Macduff is here. "Of all men else, I have avoided thee. But get thee back, my soul is too much charged with blood of thine already." So he says, I wanted to avoid you. Of all the men on this battlefield, I never wanted to stand in front of you because I am already guilty of spilling so much blood of your family. Right? I've already killed so many members of your family. I don't want to kill any more of you. Right? I don't want to kill you and add to that large number of people that I have killed. So Macduff's reply is, I have no words. My voice is in my sword. So he says, I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to hear anything that you say. My words will be spoken by my sword. Okay, it is my weapon which is going to talk to you. Thou bloodier villain than terms can give thee out. So you are a bloodier villain. You are such a bloody villain, such a cruel villain that there are no words that can be used to describe you. Right? You are more bloody than any words that I can say. And then we see them fight on the stage. They fight. So in the middle of the fight, Macbeth says, Thou losest labour. As easy mayest thou the intrenchant air with thy keen sword impress as make me bleed. Let fall thy blade on vulnerable crests. I bear a charmed life which must not yield to one of woman born. So he says, you are just fighting without any chance of victory. Right? It is easier for you to cut the air with your sword. Right? No, you cannot cut the air. Right? The air is everywhere. You cannot cut it in two pieces. Right? So just like striking the air, it is useless to strike me because I live a charmed life. Right? There is some magical power in my life which protects me from any enemy who is born from a woman. Okay. So here we see Macduff's very interesting answer. He says, despair thy charm. Let your magical charm be, despair. Let it bring you no hope at all. Let all your hope end at this point of time. And let the angel whom thou still hast served tell thee, Macduff was from his mother's womb untimely ripped. So you go and ask your supernatural powers about Macduff, and they will tell you that Macduff was taken from his mother's womb before he was, delivered. So he was not delivered by natural birth. Instead, it was like a cesarean section. He was cut out of his mother's womb. Okay. So technically, we can say that Macduff was not born from a woman. He was not born. He was cut out of his mother's, womb. So hearing this, finally, Macbeth realizes the truth. Right? He realizes that the evil forces have been completely playing with him all along. So he says, Accursed be that tongue that tells me so, for it hath cowed my better part of man. So let your tongue be cursed. If you say that you are not born of a woman, let your tongue be cursed, because it has already turned me into a coward. Okay, I forget my courage when I now realize that you are capable of defeating me. You are capable of killing me. And be these juggling fiends no more believed, that palter with us in a double sense. Okay. So now he's giving us all some advice. Never believe these devils. Fiend is a devil. They will juggle you like a ball. You might have seen in circuses, people throwing these balls and catching them, five or six balls all together. That is what juggling is. So these evil forces, like the witches, they treat you like a toy. They will throw you up and down, and they will play with you, all to corrupt your soul and to take away your virtues. Okay. So they always speak in a double sense. There is always a hidden meaning behind their words, that keep the word of promise to our ear and break it to our hope. So although their promise is kept, Macbeth's hope is now destroyed. He had hoped that he will be victorious, but that is not going to happen. He turns to Macbeth and says, I will not fight thee. Okay, I am not going to fight you. So Macbeth says, then yield thee, coward, and live to be the show and gaze of the time. We will have thee as our rarer monsters are, painted on a pole, and under it, here may you see the tyrant. So Macbeth is now making fun of Macbeth. He says, if you cannot fight, then surrender to me. I will put you in a cage, and I will display you to everyone. Just like we put rare animals in zoos and people come to see them. I will put you in a cage, and under the cage I will write, here you can see a tyrant. So if you want to see what a tyrant is, come and look at Macbeth's cage. Okay, so we will keep you safe. If you don't want to die, just surrender. So hearing these words, Macbeth is really angry. He's a very proud person, right? So he says, I will not yield, which means he is not going to surrender. I will not yield to kiss the ground before young Malcolm's feet and to be baited with the rabble's curse. So he says, I don't want to fall on Malcolm's feet. Okay, and I don't want the population. I don't want the people of this country to curse me. Though Burnham would be come to Dunsinane, and thou oppose it, being of no woman born, yet I will try the last. So he says, even if the forest at Burnham has now come to Dunsinane, even if you are standing against me, a person who was not born from a woman, I will fight till the end. Before my body I throw my warlike shield, lay on Macduff, and damned be him that first cries, hold enough. So I am holding my shield before my body, and now let us fight. So let the person who says enough stop. Right? During the fight, if somebody becomes tired, they will say enough, stop, I am defeated, you win. So the person who says such a word, they will be cursed. So we are going to fight, and our fight can have only one end, and that is in the death of either Macbeth or Malcolm. Sorry, not Malcolm, Macduff. So exit, fighting. Okay, so both of them exit the scene, fighting. And we see on the stage Malcolm along with Seward, Ross, other thanes and soldiers. So they have finally defeated all the other enemies, and now Malcolm is declaring, I would the friends we miss were safe arrived. So we are all here. I only wish that my other friends are also safe. They have also safely defeated their enemies, and I hope they have now safely captured the castle. Seward replies, some must go off, and yet by these I see so great a day as this is cheaply brought. So he says, of course some people will be killed. Go off here means they will have to leave this world. So in every battle there are some people at least who die. So Seward is he's a very experienced soldier, so he knows that, right? Some people will die. But he says, even if we sacrifice a few lives, that is a good sacrifice if we are able to defeat such an evil person like Macbeth. So Malcolm looks around and he says, two people are missing, Macduff and your noble son. So Ross comes and informs Seward, your son, my lord, has paid a soldier's debt. A soldier's debt means he has, sacrificed his life. Okay. He only lived but till he was a man, the which no sooner had his prowess confirmed in the unshrinking station where he fought, but like a man he died. So Ross says, he proved that he was a man. Although he was a young fellow, in the fight he did not show any cowardice. He fought face to face with Macbeth, and that shows him that he is a true man. Okay. So Seward is now sad and shocked, and he says, then he is dead. Ross replies, aye, and brought off the field. Your cause of sorrow must not be measured by his worth, for then it hath no end. So even though he's killed, he's dead, his worth is infinite, right? He is such a worthy person that it is not possible to calculate his preciousness. Okay, so you must not mourn him too highly, because he actually died in a very honorable manner. So Seward says, had he his hurts before? So did he become wounded before he was killed? Hurts here means wounded. No, was he wounded before he died? And Ross says, aye, on the front. So all the wounds are on the front side of his body. Why is that important? Because if the wounds are on the back side of your body, that means that you are running away from the enemy, right? So that is why the enemy was able to strike you on your back. So the wounds on the backside is a symptom, it's a symbol of cowardice. But in Seward's son's case, his wounds were on the front part of his body, which shows that he was a very brave soldier. So Seward replies, why then, God's soldier be he. Had I as many sons as I have hairs, I would not wish them to a fairer death, and so his knell is knolled. So he says, then I am satisfied. He died as an honorable soldier. So now he can go and become God's soldier in heaven. His soul is not going to go to hell, right? Because he died honorably, his soul is going to go towards heaven. So even if Seward had so many sons, he says it is best to have a son who dies like a soldier, right? So finally, his knell is knolled means his death bell, the bell indicating his death is now being rung. So Malcolm says, he is worth more sorrow, and that I will spend for him. So we will talk more about his bravery and his sacrifice at a later time. Okay. But Seward says, he is worth no more. They say he parted well and paid his score, and so God be with him. Here comes newer comfort. So Seward is a very brave man. He says, let us not talk about my son anymore. He's gone and he died well, and that is enough. Okay. So let God be with him. And now let us turn to the more important matters, in this country. So we see at this point Macduff re-entering the stage carrying Macbeth's head. Okay, so finally Macduff has defeated Macbeth, cut off his head, and now Macbeth's head is being brought to the king. And Macduff says, hail king, for so thou art, behold, where stands the usurper's cursed head. The time is free. I see thee compassed with thy kingdom's pearl, that speak my salutation in their minds, whose voices I desire aloud with mine. Hail, King of Scotland. So the first person to call Malcolm king is Macduff. So he says, hail king, hello to you king, victory to you king, for so thou art, you are the king now. Behold where stands the usurper's cursed head. So you can look and see where I have placed the head of the usurper. Usurper means somebody who has stolen the throne away from the rightful heir. So now the time is free. Now Scotland has been set free. I see thee compassed with thy kingdom's pearl. So all the best people in the kingdom's pearl means the best, the most precious people in the kingdom are all surrounding Malcolm. And in their mind, they are all speaking my salutation. My salutation means I was the one who first called you king. So they are all calling you by the name king in their minds. Okay. So whose voices I desire aloud with mine. So I am just expressing their voices, their inner desires aloud with my voice. We want you to become the next king of Scotland. And they all repeat the same the same words. They all say, "Hail, King of Scotland." And finally, we have at the very end of the play, Malcolm makes some important declarations. So we'll see that, and then we come to the end of this play. Okay. So Malcolm says, "We shall not spend a large expense of time before we reckon with your several loves and make us even with you." So he says, within a short period of time, I will meet with each one of you and I will reckon with you, means I will reward you, right? I will give you what you deserve, right? So for your loyalty, I am going to reward all of you. My thanes and kinsmen henceforth be earls, the first that ever Scotland in such an honour named. So the first step that Malcolm takes as the king is he is increasing the rank of all the thanes of Scotland to earls. Okay. An earl is a higher rank than thane. So all of them will become more powerful. Their power, their prestige, their honor, all of these things have now increased now that they have become earls, right? The first earls who have ever existed in the kingdom of Scotland. What is more to do, which would be planted newly with the time, as calling home our exiled friends abroad that fled the snares of watchful tyranny. So the next thing that he's going to do is call back all the people who left Scotland because they were afraid of Macbeth. A lot of people left Scotland, right, in order to be safe. So the next thing that Malcolm is going to do is call them all back to the country. Producing forth the cruel ministers of this dead butcher and his fiend-like queen, who, as it is taught by self and violent hands, took off her life. So the next thing to do after calling back the people who have left is rounding up all the evil ministers who helped Macbeth and his evil queen, Lady Macbeth. Okay, so all of them will be rounded up and they will be put to jail. And then Malcolm remembers what has happened to Lady Macbeth, right? It is said that she committed suicide. She took her own life using her own hands. So look at how Macbeth is described here. A dead butcher and his fiend-like queen. Macbeth is called a dead butcher. Butcher is somebody who cuts meat. And fiend means devil, right? A devil-like queen. And then he says, finally, what needful else that calls upon us by the grace of grace, we will perform in measure, time, and place. And all the other things that grace, the capital G, grace is God. All the other things that God desires me to do, I will do according to the time and place. And he ends his speech by saying, thanks to all at once and to each one. So jointly, he is thanking all the people who have helped him defeat Macbeth. And he is inviting all of them, whom we invite, to see us crowned at Scone. He is inviting everyone to go to the place called Scone, where the crown of Scotland is finally going to be placed on his head. Okay. And that is the last line of this play. Okay. So I hope you have enjoyed the story of Macbeth. it is an interesting story because it tells us about how, an innocent man, a very loyal person, can easily be corrupted by temptation and turned into a most evil, violent tyrant. So that is the tragedy of Macbeth. He started out as this perfect, very brave soldier, but ends as a universally hated, devilish character. Okay. So anyway, we have finished the all the scenes and all the acts of the play. Uh, now it is your time to go through the play in detail. Note down any of the doubts that you may have while you're going through the lines, and you can send them to me. You can send them to me through WhatsApp, or you can call me and ask, and we will clear your doubts. And one more thing that you have to do is look at all the previous question papers, because that will really help you to understand what kind of questions to expect. So anyway, we are going to be winding up this class here today. I wish you all the best, and I'll see you in the next semester.